My name is Rob Jones. I'm the VP of Product and Sales for a company called Netsnapper. And what we do is we securely connect the Internet of Things. Now, we don't necessarily do cool things in the home, like lots of cameras or things to do with your cat or your dog or things like that. We do, I guess, the real and the sharp end of IoT stuff, maybe the boring end of it. We work a lot in industrial, utility, large enterprise piece. So we have client-server software that helps do the security piece. We do a lot of connectivity part of it. And I don't want to talk a lot about necessarily about what we do today. But what I do want to talk about is a subject that I get asked a lot through a lot of interviews and things like that, because people want to talk about cool things like blockchain and things like that, and how does that fit in industrial IoT, or IIoT as the new acronym is. So I'll talk a little bit about that, how these sorts of networks are evolving, and I think hopefully set up some things for some questions from you guys that hopefully I can answer from some of the pain points, the challenges of doing real IoT networks and real industrial deployments today. And hopefully it'll tee up some nice things for Max to ask in panel questions and we can talk about later. So, first of all, the growth of the Internet of Things. We've all heard of this, but we all like big sort of hockey stick slides. Mentioned hockey for, there's a couple of Canadian brethren out there that were cheering earlier, so I'm a Canadian as well, so we like the hockey stick. This is saying 24 billion IoT devices will be installed and connected by 2020. I saw another thing from Cisco, some research that said by 2020 we'll have 50 billion devices connected. So I'm not sure who you believe, if it's 24 or 50, but there's a lot of devices. And those devices create a lot of opportunity for businesses. I mean, I'm not going to talk too much about the home piece, but you know, I'm a fairly big home user of IoT things. I have security cameras at home. I have all sorts of things like my thermostat. I can turn my heat on while I'm talking to you guys, which really isn't very useful right now. But it does have some great applications. But there's some real challenges that are associated with the numbers and the growth and the security piece. So I'll talk a little bit about that. And talk about the blockchain role. So a lot of people ask me, because everyone loves talking about blockchain. Blockchain's pretty cool. Blockchain's very relevant to a lot of things. And my answer is always yes, that blockchain is relevant in IoT. So we have our centralized versus distributed network architecture. People talk about how you scale those many devices. Well, blockchain is a good way for authentication, for security. Some of the things it helps with is being scalable. Distributed, I think, you know, the centralized network doesn't scale like that other one on the right, the distributed piece. Identity spoofing and being able to access different devices, validate that those devices are there today. That's more of the today piece and how you have to secure some of the stuff today. It's a publicly accessible and established infrastructure, which is great. When you're scaling these things that big, it's hard to build new chunks of private infrastructure. And of course, everyone wants to leverage things that are out there already, so this is becoming a tried and trusted thing. Asset tracking is also very important when you have things in logistics networks and industrial networks where you have things moving around you need to keep track of. And then I think moving into the future, it's really going to help accelerating some of these deployments in larger industrial networks. It's really going to help when you integrate some of the things with payment-related pieces. So if you're doing shipping or you're accessing things for payment online or accessing something via the Internet of Things for payment, whether it's your washing machine at home, I don't know if that's really going to be relevant or not, even though it costs $1,000 more. But you can do that sort of authentication and payment piece, which a lot of the blockchain piece has been set up to do anyway. So that's all really cool. And then I think when you get into the really, more future-looking stuff, and we do a lot of discussions with people like IoT on IBM Watson is a big thing about machine learning and how do you track these things and how you can use blockchain to start tracking transactions and do machine learning on how that works. There's a big role for it in the future. However, one of the things that we get involved in now is, okay, the triage part of it and the emergency room piece. So one of the things, especially on the industrial side, that a lot of people don't realize is this isn't all new technology that is being scaled up to grow. This is, in some cases, it's evolutionary from 20-year-old technology. So one of the deployments we're working on with a water utility right now, they've got stuff that's discontinued by BT. They're not really sure how to connect it to things. And actually now they're putting in things with routers and SIM cards and all sorts of stuff and connecting it 5 other ways, and they used to connect it one way and it was quite secure just because it's old tech. But before we get into blockchain, before we get into all the really cool stuff of getting to 50 billion devices, there's actually some really, really difficult and painful things to solve right now. So old technologies, particularly when you get into utility sector, some stuff is 10, 20 years old. And actually, 10, 20-year-old technology is fun, but part of the evolution path is if you've got a water network with pumps and sensors and everything out there, how do you evolve that network? Because you can't just overnight put in new technology. You have to have something that works with the old technology, works with the new technology. A big part of this is plugging into the networks of today. So actually adding in SIM cards and mobile networks. And then you get into things like, I don't know if you guys have heard the term M2M. Well, M2M was IoT before IoT was cool, right? It's just putting SIM cards in, it's having machines talk to each other. That sort of network layer has a whole different aspect. The security challenges around it. If you have to go to a mobile operator and say, I need to deploy a secure network for an industry and I need to do it with SIM cards, a lot of times you have to do something called a private access point. So a private access point will take you 2 months and a whole lot of money to deploy with a mobile operator. And then you can only secure SIMs from one operator, and then you start to get into multi-SIM networks, multi-connections. There's a lot of pain here that I think has to be solved before we get into blockchain. And then how do we make it manageable, right? So we talked about, the software-defined networks is a big thing where you can secure between different types of networks without a lot of legacy stuff. But then you've got things like Cisco VPN servers are great for VPNs in a traditional way. They cost a fortune, and they're a real pain to manage in some of the large enterprise pieces. And then I've alluded to this, when you start getting into different types of connections, 3G, 4G, ADSL, Wi-Fi, satellite, how do you secure between those networks? Now we're getting to transport networks, now we're getting to logistics networks, and actually, they use a combination of all of these. How do you then secure things when you're moving from one of those networks to the other one, back to the other one? Trying to stay connected in an IP world, massive problems with that. Not just from a deployment and management point of view, but the security piece is a big thing as well. And finally, you get into things like encryption. Well, you'd be surprised at how much is not encrypted today. And some of those old networks that have just fixed line connectivity hasn't been too much of a problem, but now we're opening up, that becomes much bigger of an issue. And then the final piece is a lot of challenges around IP addresses. And it's not as sexy as washing machines that tell you when your washing's done, but a lot of people are running out of IP addresses. So how do you actually make this stuff work? A lot of networks are stuck on IPv4. You can't actually get enough devices to manage IoT. So you need to move to IPv6, but not all networks support it, and there's a lot of deployment issues supported around that. So I don't like to basically say no to blockchain as a relevant security technology. It's a great thing, it's very future-looking, but I wanted to highlight some of the real issues that actually a lot of these industrial deployments are going on now. We're really in the thick of managing some of those things. And there's some real things now in the triage room, in the emergency room for some of the industrial IoT security that need to be addressed now before blockchain comes in and facilitates stuff in the future. So this is some of the things around just sort of a timeline. I think some of the things I talked about are sort of up until now. I think blockchain is 2020s and beyond. Some of it's going to be played with now. Some very interesting things happen, but there's a lot that needs to happen first. So that's all I have to say today. But I want to open it up for questions now and also for the panel sessions. And thanks very much for your time and listening to me.
Question time. Let's get some more. Hi, I want to point out that Sweden is world champions in ice hockey. We beat Canada. It's important knowledge. But my question is, you have, when you work in IoT, there's different systems. And there's a need for standardizations in this field, and also in smart cities. So how would you work with those issues in your company?
That's right. So I just want to make sure I understand the question. This is how do we work with standardization?
Yeah, are you part of the development of standardizations?
Yeah, so one of the things that we participate in is there's a number of bodies doing interoperability, because interoperability is very important in the industrial IoT world. So there's a body called the Industrial Internet Consortium, and we do a lot of work with them. There's a lot of big players in there, but it's actually an opportunity for smaller companies like ourselves to play with the Dells and the Ciscos and the Tatas of this world, and actually show interoperability. A lot of this stuff, there are some new standards in some of the last mile technologies, like LoRa and Ziptran and Bluetooth Low Energy and all that kind of stuff. We tend to work actually in a very open standards-based world. We focus on IP connectivity. If it's IP connected, we help secure it, and we use things like IPsec and some of the standards to do that. But again, with new last mile technologies coming in, we're using things like this Industrial Internet Consortium to do some testing and making sure the interop piece works.
Hi Robert, my name's Robert as well. Security is a big thing with Internet of Things. So how are you said your company is quite secure in terms of offering security. How are you able to do that?
That's good. It's a very good question. And security means a lot of things to a lot of people. I think security can mean anything from a physical lock on the door of a data center and maybe a Rottweiler that's a bit aggressive outside that door. It can mean firewalls, it can mean encryption, it can mean a lot of that. So a lot of what we do is we have client-server technology. What we do is we put firewalls not just in the core of a network, but we actually do that out at the edge. So there's a lot of different routers and gateways from different manufacturers that we work with. We put our client software in there. So we do, from the end to end, we put firewalls on both sides of things. And then we have configurable encryption, up to 384-bit encryption that goes in between that. We also do a lot of integration within large enterprises to their existing authentication systems. So they've got things that they already have employee login details and everything else. We can integrate with that to make sure that the access levels are already configured according to their access levels within their enterprise base. But for us, it's usually taking a client-server piece, and when you have a client out there far on the edge of the network, that means you can secure everything from the edge back in. Does that answer your question? Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll do one more, maybe this side somewhere.
Yeah, I know these have all these questions around kind of standardization, but from what you're hearing in these kind of consortiums, where do you think this is heading in terms of standardized protocols? Is it going between kind of one company leading the way, or is it going to be a mix of stuff for internet?
That's a very good question, and I think it's difficult to say. There's a lot of the big players in this space, and the Dells and the Ciscos and the whoever's in this world that they obviously have a lot of influence in these standard bodies. The good thing is there's a lot of it's not like everything is new standards. Like I said, there's a lot of last mile standards for connectivity or wireless access in the last mile to different devices that scale in that piece, and there's a lot of people competing in that space. For the rest of it, I think there's generally a movement towards IP connectivity, IPsec, and using open standards pieces. And I think those are some of the things that are getting a lot of traction going forward. So the good thing is a lot of that's already open. I mean, it's the Internet of Things. That internet part is already fairly well established, so everyone needs to play in that space. Where I see there's a lot of influence, a lot of the bigger players, they tend to focus on within large enterprise and their connectivity back into some of the virtualization pieces, so into Amazon Web Services, into Microsoft Azure and things like that. So a lot of the big players are focused on their sweet spot, which is the core of the large enterprise, and then back into the virtualization server piece. Where I think there is less focus and a lot of opportunity where we sort of focus on is that edge piece where you go from the enterprise actually out to gateways and things remotely and devices in the field. And that's the area where I think there's less things established, but a lot of things that are still a very changing environment.
Okay, cool. Okay, can we applaud please? One out, one in.